Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to be starting the webinar now. So I'd just like to thank you for joining us and welcome to the next installment of our Adult Education Leaders webinar series. Today's webinar will be on helping your adult learners remediate and learn math with an individual path to success. I'm Meg Boyer, the Marketing Manager for Adult Education and Workforce Development here at McGraw-Hill Education. Before we get started, I'd like to go over just a quick few housekeeping items. This webinar is being presented in listen-only mode, which means you'll be able to hear the presenter, but he won't be able to hear you. However, that does not mean that you cannot participate. We definitely want your participation. If you have any questions along the way, just type them into that questions panel on your toolbar, and we'll be answering them throughout today's presentation. Joining us as our presenter today is Raymond Ramos. Ray is a Senior Implementation Specialist for ALEKS. He works with students, teachers, administrators, and sales consultants in the field to make sure the power of ALEKS is unlocked for every unique implementation. So, Ray, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks a lot, Meg, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate you having, appreciate having you all here today. We're going to talk about ALEKS, and for those of you that have not heard about ALEKS before, ALEKS is a web-based adaptive math program that's part of the McGraw-Hill family. And so what we're going to do today is talk about, just like Meg said, the power of ALEKS and how we can unlock individualized learning paths for your adult education students. And one of the first things I want to do is just talk about what ALEKS is, first and foremost. Of course, ALEKS is, again, a web-based math program. And it's going to cover a large range of topics from third grade level math all the way to 12th grade and college level math as well. And what we're going to talk about today is the student experience and what students will see in the program to give you a taste of what that looks like. And also jump over to the instructor account, the Instructor Module, to show how educators can use this information and data that students are producing in the program to really demonstrate an individualized path for those students. And so what I'm going to do is jump on in. The first thing to note is that I am on the ALEKS website. This is just aleks.com. If you ever want to log in and check out a free trial account, look at any reading material or tutorials, they're all on our website, and it's all for you to check out. What I'm going to do is jump to this other tab and look at our student module experience first. And again, if you have any questions throughout, please type them into the box. I'm happy to answer them as we talk here. And I'm going to pause throughout to see if there's any questions as well. But first, let's go into that student module. And as you can see here, it's very new. So I'm going to jump into this new student module. It was just released officially just a few days ago. And you know, we learned a lot of things from our previous student module. And one of those things that we'll see is that students don't like to read, right? And as you can see here, we've made it much more visual. So in terms of instructions on how to use the program, you can see it's telling the students that ALEKS is a personalized way to learn. Not a lot of text here, but visuals instead. That figures out the topics that students already know and then creates that path, that individualized path to success that we've talked about already. So what I'm going to do is just get started here and go into the student module and look at some of these pop-ups. These are kind of just-in-time notifications that tell me what I need to do next when I first get started into the program. My favorites is this next one, which is our graphing tool, which allows me to use a virtual pencil to plot my point. And then I can use that ruler there to anchor it right onto the program. And then finally draw my line directly into ALEKS, okay? And so, again, students aren't guessing here. They're not picking A, B, C, or D to pick the correct graph. They're actually building it within the program. And what we're going to do is as we go around through some of the questions in ALEKS, I'll show you some of these tools that are available to students. One thing I should point out before we finish this tutorial here is that ALEKS will work on multiple types of devices and nothing needs to be installed. Okay, so you don't need to install Java or Flash or any web plugin. It's just going to work natively in the browser for you, so you don't need to worry about that. And also, it'll work on tablet devices as well. And actually, it'll work on phones, but we just don't recommend the experience just because it's so small. But any tablet device, any computer, any Chromebook, for example, ALEKS will work well on all of those devices. Okay, so that's just using the tools, right? I'm going to skip this part, and it gives me kind of a celebration moment. We're going to get more of these throughout using ALEKS. I'm just going to press continue here and jump into the next portion, which is our knowledge check. Okay, so our knowledge check in ALEKS, this initial one here, you can think of this as an assessment, a diagnostic, or we're trying to find out what a student knows, what they don't know, but most importantly, what a student is ready to learn. Okay, so when we're thinking about our session, we're helping adult learners remediate to learn at an individual path. This is what we're doing to figure that out for the student. Okay, so I'm going to start this knowledge check here. And again, it gives me instructions on how this works. So stay focused, don't get distracted. Have a pencil and paper available. Don't get help from others. And of course, do your best. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to jump in and start our knowledge check. Now what this is going to do in the course that I've started in here, it's going to give me a question around the middle of the curriculum. And as a student, I can come in here and just answer the question. So I would get my pencil and paper out and answer this one. If I know it, then I can put it in, but let's imagine that that was the answer there. That's definitely wrong, but I'm going to submit that anyway. And that'll take me on to the next question. So notice that it did not give me any feedback about the correctness of my answer. It just moved me on to the next question. And you know, if I actually knew the answer, I could put that in as well. And one thing I want to mention is that I have a skip and solve button, okay? Students will not get these buttons. Students can't just skip it or have a solve button, though I'm sure they'd want that. It's just for me for our demonstration to go a little faster today. So I'm going to click on that, and that's going to put in the answers, the correct answers for me. And again, when I press submit, it doesn't tell me if that was correct, okay? But one thing that is happening is the ALEKS assessment, the ALEKS knowledge check here, is adapting to the student. So what this means is that this is not predetermined. It actually changes depending on the answers I give to the questions and how I answer the question, right? So for example, this question here, right, as a fraction in simplest form, if I am way off, right, it's going to adapt a certain way. But if I just get the answer correct and don't put it in simplest form, it's going to adapt differently because I was actually very close to getting that correct, right? So here, I'm not going to put it in simplest form. So it seems like I do know it, but I just forgot that one step. It's actually giving me a little tip here. So I'm going to submit that anyway. Okay, so this assessment here, as it adapts to me, note that it's about 25 to 30 questions long. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour. But let's say you don't have an hour to complete this. The great part about ALEKS is that it's all cloud-based, right? And that it will save your progress. So as students work in here, students will be able to log off and log back in the next day, and they won't have to start over or do this again. Okay, so again, this knowledge check adapts to the students, about 25 to 30 questions, and saves all progress. So I think this is a good point for me to pause here. Meg, do we have any questions that have come in regarding the assessment or anything we've talked about so far?
Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions that have come in. Ray, how often do students get knowledge checks?
Good question. So as you're going to see in a moment, we're going to jump into the learning mode. And basically what happens is after a student learns about 20 topics in ALEKS, they automatically get another knowledge check later on to make sure they're retaining that information. So I'm going to touch on that again as we jump into the learning mode, but that is a great question.
Okay, thanks. And you had mentioned tablets, but does ALEKS work on phones?
Yeah, so again, ALEKS does work on phones and smaller devices that have just through, there's no app, it just works through the internet browser. But we just don't recommend the experience just because it's kind of small. But I know I've logged in before and used ALEKS on a phone, so it does work, but we just don't recommend it because it's small.
Okay, great to know. And then one last question. Are there any other languages that ALEKS is offered in?
There are. So ALEKS is actually works in Spanish, as a matter of fact. Right now, since the new student module has just been released, we haven't done all the translations, but everything will be able to be translated to Spanish in about at the beginning of August. So in about a couple months, there's going to be a toggle on ALEKS that will change all the text, including the interface, to Spanish.
Okay, great. And actually, we did have one more question come in, or a few more come in, actually, as we were chatting about those. Does the program accumulate the amount of hours a student has completed lessons? So I think this, this person is asking about, does ALEKS have time on task feature?
It does, absolutely. So the time students spend in here is all being tracked. And as we get to the instructor side, we're going to jump into that report and look at that in great detail. So all that information will be there for you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ray.
Okay, thanks, Meg, for those questions, and keep them coming. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to skip this knowledge check here, and I'm going to simulate this. So again, the students won't be able to skip this, but I'm going to simulate this in our demonstration today. So imagine if we had a student who had little knowledge of algebra readiness here. So I'm going to jump into the course. And as a student completes their assessment, they get their results here. So the student's coming in knowing 85 of the topics in the course already based on that initial knowledge check. So here is their pie with the different topic areas, and we can click in there to see what we know. But what I'm going to do is press continue and jump to my home page where I'll see my ALEKS pie that we just looked at. But I can also click on any of those slices, and it will tell me what I know, what I've mastered, and what I have remaining. I can also click on my timeline. So this will give me an idea of any objectives that have been created for me. It'll tell me where they're at and kind of my progress towards them. We're going to talk about that a little bit more after we learn some topics in the program. So that is coming. So a couple pictures of how this works. And then finally, we get this big button here that says Start My Path. So here in ALEKS, we've created an individualized learning path, a personalized learning path for this student based on the results of their knowledge check. So as I click that and press Start My Path, it's going to bring me to a learning page with a topic that I'm most ready to learn. So in ALEKS, we're able to determine what a student is ready to learn based on their prerequisite knowledge. And then on their path, we give them the most efficient path, so the topic that they're most likely, based on our research, to learn. So what I can do is I can look at my learning page and see the question, and then I can click on Start, and that'll take me to the learning mode. And when I'm in the learning mode, I can practice the topic. So previously, I like putting in 9s in my answer, so I'm going to do that again here and press Check. Now, if you recall, in the assessment, it would just move me on to a new question. But during the learning mode here, it's actually telling me that I got that answer incorrect. So it's going to give me feedback about my answer. Let me put in a correct one. And remember, students don't get the solve button. But let's fix that and press recheck. Now I've gotten that correct, and you can see that my progress bar on this particular topic has gone up, right, by 1. Now when I press next, it gives me a new instance of that question. And I can see here I have a different variable. So let's say I really don't know how to answer this particular question, right? And instead of saying I don't know or I haven't learned this yet, I actually can click on Explain, and that'll give me a step-by-step explanation of the exact problem I was working on. So there's a question there, there's the explanation below, and then finally the answer. And what's great about this is, again, if you start using this in August, you'll have that Spanish toggle, and all the text will change to Spanish, including this Explain page, our dictionary that's included with the program. All of that can be in Spanish, and you can toggle back and forth. The other thing is that ALEKS does not use a bank of questions. When I click on More Practice again in a moment, you'll see that ALEKS will have a new algorithmically generated instance of that problem. So basically saying that when we're in a problem, there's basically a limitless amount of questions a student can get with different variables and different scenarios. The final thing I'll mention, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail as we get into the instructor side, you can actually integrate a textbook with ALEKS. And one of the integrations that's coming soon is with the Common Core Basics program that McGraw-Hill has. And when you have that integrated with the program, you'll have references to the textbook here. So for this particular problem, evaluating an algebraic expression, when a student clicks Explain, they'll see a box here that'll tell them where they can find this in their textbook as well. There's different ways you can use ALEKS, and one of them is with that textbook integration. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on More Practice here, and I'm going to get this correct for us. So I'm going to zoom through here. You can see that these are all unique instances of this problem. And after a student gets this correct and fills in that bar all the way to the end, I'm going to do this one more time. It's going to give me that celebration moment that I talked about. So here it says, Ray, keep up the good work, and I can continue my path and keep learning and maintain that learning momentum by clicking this button. Now, even though we want students, or we give the students the opportunity to have little distraction and work on their learning path that's most efficient, we also want students to have the opportunity to have some autonomy in their learning and to be able to pull up topics and move around if they want to. So a student can actually click up here and click on one of these cards to move to a different topic type. So perhaps, I don't want to do additive property today, but I really want to do another algebraic expression, or maybe plotting opposite integers on the number line. So what I could do is I can click on that topic and get a preview at the bottom and then start practicing that one. But note that the topics that are available to students are always the ones that they're ready to learn. And what this means is that when a student is working in ALEKS, we don't provide topics to them that they don't have the prerequisites for. We always give the topics to students that they are going to have a high success rate in, right? They've met the prereqs for, and they're going to do well in. And so even though the student's moving around, they're still getting topics at their level. Now the other thing I want to mention is that when we click on this Ready to Learn pull down, notice that it can be separated by different subject areas. So if a student wants to focus on fractions, they can click on that and only get the fractions topics they're ready to learn. But in addition to that, when you integrate a book or even create your own objectives in ALEKS, students can work on specific chapters that are correlated with a book or specific objectives that you want them to complete. So you can imagine this, instead of saying fractions, this can say chapter 2 of a book, or fractions goal in your class, this custom goal that you created. So we're kind of looking at vanilla ALEKS right now, but just know that there are customizations available if you're thinking about using it in a certain way. Okay, so I'm going to click on the home page and bring us back to our home page and talk a little bit more about our timeline. But before that, let's see if there's any other questions that have come in.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yes, so Ray, can anything be printed?
Yeah, so one of the things, if you notice where here it says work on something else and there's no other assignments, the reason we have that is there are custom assignments that can be created in ALEKS that can be printed. So there's an assignments category. So again, we're going to look at that on the instructor side. But if you want to make your own custom assignments, you can build, for example, quizzes, homeworks, and tests, and have them printed or done online. There's also automatically generated worksheets that are tailored to students' individual knowledge. So if you have a group of 20 students and you have them create a worksheet, these printable worksheets are all going to be tailored to that specific student. So that is what you can print in ALEKS for sure. And obviously you can print several reports, as we'll get into in a moment.
Okay, great. And after the student module, we already talked about tracking time on task within ALEKS. Are there any other good ways to track time spent in the program that we haven't discussed yet?
Tracking time in the program? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the student side, actually, students have their own reports as well. So let's do a quick preview of that while we're here. Of course, we're going to look at class level and even administrator level reports as we get into the instructor side. But know that students have their own reports as well. So they can come in here and see this week's activity, for example, their most recent activity. Obviously, in my demo account, we don't have a ton of activity, but we can see that we spent about 17 minutes in here. So this is being tracked in real time. And we have some other different reports here that we can look at in terms of progress and assignments. And so maybe I can come in here, and I think progress is my favorite, so I want to pull that to the front, and then it'll show me my progress here. So, students have their own reports as an individual, and then we'll talk about on the teacher side in about 5 minutes what we have for instructors as well.
Okay, great. And then we have one last question.
Sure.
So it's actually about the LMS. So this particular customer is already using some products within the ConnectEd platform, and they're wondering, are there any big differences, or what are the major differences between the ALEKS platform and ConnectEd?
With ConnectEd, so obviously we're going to have some synergies there with ConnectEd and ALEKS. But I think one of the big things when you're thinking about ALEKS is that this is McGraw-Hill's, right? McGraw-Hill's premier adaptive platform. So if you're thinking about something that as students use it, it changes to them based on their knowledge and different conditions in terms of where the student is at, that's where ALEKS can really shine. Now, of course, like I mentioned before, this can be used together with the different materials, and there's different ways to actually link ALEKS with the McGraw-Hill software. So you can actually link directly to certain pages in the McGraw-Hill digital software, and depending on the type of book you're using, some of those resources actually can be embedded within ALEKS. So you can actually have videos and so forth that are the McGraw-Hill resources that can be embedded directly into the ALEKS program.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we do have a couple more questions that are coming in.
Sure, yeah.
So going back to the tracking time on task, does ALEKS time the student out after a certain number of minutes of no activity?
It does. So the default time is 30 minutes, and if a student times out with no action after 30 minutes, none of that time is counted, right? So if 30 minutes passes and I don't click anything or don't take any actions, I basically get logged off automatically, and that previous 30 minutes just isn't in any of the reports. Okay, so we want to make sure students have activity in here, and as you'll see in the instructor side, I keep talking about it, but it's going to show us that it's going to be paired with not just time, but also activity and topics learned. So you can really see it together in terms of if a student's spending time in there but not learning anything, you can see that pretty clearly in the program. Okay,
great. Thank you. And then, is there a suggested browser to use ALEKS?
Yeah, so if you're using a Macintosh or Apple computer, you want to use Safari or Firefox. Those are the best. If you're using a Windows-based computer, you want to use Chrome, Firefox, or Internet Explorer. Those are the best there. And if you're on a tablet, you just want to use the default browser. So for Apple, it's Safari. For Android and other Windows-based tablets, it's going to be Chrome or Windows Explorer. So I'm going to pause this there on the questions. They're great questions. Keep them coming in. But let's continue now, because as I continue, I'm sure I'll answer some of the questions that you have. So I'll keep going for a sec. Is that okay, Meg?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So the student account here, now that we're back here, we've learned that topic. One of the things to point out is that we have a delineation here between mastered, learned, and of course remaining. And so the reason why we have learned separate is because when students learn in the ALEKS program, it's not static learning. It's actually dynamic, meaning that when you learn something, you don't learn it forever. So I know those of you on the call today, you're absorbing every single thing. And if I give you a quiz on this 2 weeks from now, you'll remember 100% of it. I don't think so, right? Because memory is not perfect. I know the folks on this call are great, but you'll probably forget a few things here. And we kind of recognize that this is how learning works. And so after a student learns about 20 of these topics, they automatically get that knowledge check that we mentioned before to make sure they're retaining what they're learning. So again, that question about how often we get these knowledge checks, it's about after every 20 topics learned. Okay, and then any topics I've shown that I've forgotten during that next knowledge check, they're added back to my path, and therefore I have to learn them again to make sure I have long-term mastery. Okay, so that's what this is all about: long-term mastery, personalized learning, and dynamic kind of learning engagement for the student. So here's my timeline. Notice that I have that one in there now. Here on that dotted line, any chapter goals. So if I've created objectives for the students, it'll tell me as a student if I'm going to meet that goal, and show me how much progress I'm making on a day-to-day and even week or monthly basis in the program. I know we mentioned some of these other features here. So again, there's assignments in here, worksheets, reports, and dictionary. But I'm going to stop there on the student side and jump over to the instructor side now. Okay, so let me pop in here to the instructor side. I'm going to leave that tab open. So if we still have more questions about the student side, we can always jump back there. Well, let's jump into the instructor module, and here is where we can look at the kind of data and information that you'll have as an instructor in the program, or even as an administrator, to look at what students are doing in ALEKS. And so the first thing to note is that ALEKS is based on the instructor module is based on levels. Okay, so right now we're looking at a demonstration instructor account. Okay, and at my home level as an instructor, I'll have different reports and menu options for all of my classes together, and also for my instructor account. So if I want to change my email address or some of my instructor level options, I can do that. But note that if I select a specific class, so let's say I'm going to pick Algebra 1 in this case, just for our purposes today. Notice that the dashboard tiles here have changed. So they dynamically changed to show me only information for this specific class, right? And if I wanted to go down to an individual student in my algebra class, I can pick that student, and now all the menu options in the tiles are for that one student. Okay, so remember that there's different levels here and different things we can look at all these levels. And note that if you're an administrator, for example, we have higher level reports as well. So we have district level reports and things at the school level for administrators as well. Okay, what I'm going to do is jump into the class here, so Algebra 1, and talk about some of the reports that we have available to us in ALEKS. And one of the more popular reports is the ALEKS Pie report. So I'm going to click on Reports here and go to the ALEKS Pie. So if you recall from the student account, we had that pie chart in there, and it showed students kind of what their progress was in these different areas. And with the ALEKS Pie, it's a very popular report because you can look at this in different views, right? So we can look at this in terms of the ALEKS table of contents, which are those different topic areas that we mentioned before. But we can also look at it in terms of objectives. And I picked this course because in our demo account, this is a course that has a textbook integrated with it. All right, so we can come in here, and now we can look at this ALEKS course organized by the different chapters of our book. So our instructor here, our demonstration instructor, is using a textbook and has made all of the chapters objectives in their course because we want students to complete this course by chapter. And so as an instructor, maybe you want your students to work on a specific area, but you're not sure what, right? So what we can do is open up Chapter 9. So Chapter 9 is my current objective. And I can look at all of these topics here. So for example, maybe I was thinking about doing graphing an absolute value in an equation in the plane because 100% of my students have this topic remaining, right? But, only 4% are ready to learn it. So maybe I don't want to work on that one with my group yet because not all of them have the prerequisites for that topic yet. So I might want to pick something like the one right below, graphing a parabola of the form y equals ax squared, where 77% still have it remaining and 23% are ready to learn it. So 23% have met the prerequisites. It's available for them in their path. And some of them it might be for review, but they probably just learned it recently, right? So what I could do as an instructor is I can click on that topic, or that percentage, excuse me, and it'll tell me which students are ready to learn that particular topic. So now I can do a small group, or kind of like a pull-out, as students work independently in the program, and work with them on this particular topic. And so I can click on that, and it's going to give me a step-by-step explanation of that exact problem we were working on, or those students are ready to work on. So I can use this as a warm-up, for example. And then when I click on Explain, I have that step-by-step explanation right there in front of me, so I can walk the students through that, and it finally gives me the answer. And note that here's an example of that resource that's linked. So since I integrated a book with this course, now it's saying here, for additional explanation, go to lesson 9.1 of your book, where you can find more on graphing quadratic functions. That's an example of how you can integrate the text. It'll add rich resources to your course. And finally, the last thing I'll say about this report is that now that I have this group with me, I have other topics that this group is ready to learn. So I can show these topics here and work with the students on these topics while they're in a group with me to make sure that, hey, when you go back to your computer, you have several things to work on now and that we've talked about. Okay. I think I've talked a lot, Meg. I want to see if there's any questions at this point about what we talked about so far.
Okay. So one question that came in is actually about student information and that being protected. So if a school district has a site license, you know, how is that data protected and stored? And we want to just make sure that student data isn't necessarily shared.
Right. So we make sure at ALEKS that we stick with the FERPA regulations, and we stay closely aligned with that. So one of the things that we do is that when you're in the ALEKS program, and kind of this will give you an idea of one of the reports here, but you have the opportunity to put in student ID information and hide that student data. So when you're pulling up reports and so forth, and you kind of want to share that with certain groups, you can use student IDs or login names to hide certain information. So for example, in this report that we're going to talk about now, you can just toggle between their regular name, but also just use their student ID. So none of that student information is tied to a student's name. If you have more specific questions about kind of FERPA regulations in ALEKS, feel free to, or we'll follow up with you, or we'll, you can send an email and we'll talk about that further if you have kind of strict questions about that.
Perfect, thank you. All right, one of our listeners is wondering if ALEKS can be used at any time or just during school hours.
ALEKS can be used at any time. So as long as students have a web-enabled computer that meets our kind of low system requirements, they can log in from home and use it from there. You know, one of the things that is asked, and actually, again, this is a great report to talk about this, is, well, can we kind of restrict things to being at school computers or kind of outside computers? And the answer is yes to that. One of the things that we can collect is the school's domain and IP address information. So if you know what that is, then we can collect that information from you and basically uniquely identifies computers at your school. And if we put that in the system on your school, basically we can kind of restrict certain things to only happen at school. So you can restrict, for example, knowledge checks or assessments to take place at school only. You can proctor certain things. And in this report, where we're talking about the time being spent in the program, you can actually distinguish whether students have spent time at school or spent time outside of school computers, as long as we have that information. So you know, we just need to work with your IT team, or even we can just work with you to find out what those IP addresses are, and we can put that into the system.
Okay, great, thanks. We've actually had several questions come in wondering what the ALEKS lessons are based on. Are they based on the Common Core State Standards? Are they based on GED assessment targets? Are they based on college and career readiness standards? So maybe you can address that, and the textbook integration with Common Core Basics actually, also might be a great solution for this question as well.
Yeah, we're getting some tough questions here, Meg, huh? Okay, so let's talk about
We've got good listeners. What can I say?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Making me sweat a little bit. That's good, though. So, one of the things that to note about ALEKS is that we actually have an in-house content team, and we create this content based on commonly used textbooks, Common Core standards, just based on our own user research about how instructors in schools teach these courses. The thing about ALEKS is that, for example, we're looking at this algebra readiness course, and I'm going to kind of, I'll stay here, but essentially, in ALEKS, right, we create a default curriculum. So, for example, algebra readiness probably has about 400 topics in its default curriculum. And again, that's based on commonly used standards, Common Core standards, and so forth. But we actually build the course with something like 1,000 topics or a bunch of additional topics in addition to that. So if you want to customize it further, you can. And one of the things you can do is you can integrate a book, for example, the Common Core Basics. So if you integrated that book with ALEKS, the curriculum would change, right? So instead of being 400 topics, it might be 350 or 450, depending on what's covered in that book. And it'll kind of modify the content based on whatever you integrate with the course. And so for yourself as well, if you're looking at this course, you can actually create your own custom syllabus. So if you wanted to use 1,000 of those topics, you could. Or if you wanted to make a leaner course with only 100, you could do that as well. And basically what happens is when students take their knowledge check, it will be based on the content that you've left in the course. So, we do our best guess based on commonly used standards and create a default curriculum. But you have different pull-down menus and different things you can do to modify the course to your liking. Does that answer the question?
I think so. And,
yeah.
Like I said, there have been several customers that have, or listeners that have asked that question. So, so if anybody has, wants an answer in more detail, or if that didn't answer the question, there will be an email address at the very end of the webinar that we'll show you. Please feel free to continue to send those questions if we didn't, clearly enough answer that, and we'll be sure to get back to you. All right, and I think that's it for now, Ray.
Okay, thanks. So let's continue with this report. It's a very important one because there's been several questions about this. It's how do you track time in the program and how students are spending their time in here. And one of the things at the class level we have is this time and topic reports. And so what you can do is click on reports here again and click on that time and topic is what I did. And so it shows me a little kind of line here, line graph. But more interesting is if we go down here to the individual student data, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit for us. I'm gonna switch it back to names just because I like to use their names. This is all fake student data, so don't worry about that. But so for example here, what we can see is for our time log, and you can set this at different time ranges, but you can actually see how much time students are spending on a daily basis in the program. And so, for example, let's look at Kai here, Kai Vargas. On Tuesday, he spent 42 minutes in the program, attempted 3 topics, and learned 0. So what does that tell us? Well, it could tell us a couple things. It could tell us the student maybe is struggling with the topics or maybe isn't focused that day. You can see the next day did a little bit better, right? And kind of on Friday, not so well, right? So you can kind of track that information in different intervals as you want. You can even have ALEKS kind of give you this information on a weekly basis without you having to pull up the report every time. So you can actually schedule these reports using custom reports. But let's say you're in a classroom and you're kind of monitoring how they're working, and you have Kai here, and you see that he's kind of struggling. So what you can do is you can click on the student's name, and that'll bring up the individual student's time and topic report or whatever report they're working on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and look at some individual student data for Kai. So let's go back here to May 28th and these different dates. So what it shows us here on these bars is how much time a student is spending in the big bar, and then the orange is how many they learned, and I'm sorry, the blue is how many they learned, and the orange is how many they tried and weren't able to learn. Okay, so what I can do is let's say this Wednesday he worked in there. I can click on that, and that's going to give me an individual learning log that we call it. So it's a time and topic report with a learning log that gives you an idea of, is this student struggling with this, or are they spending too much time on a particular topic? And so right away, I don't know if you see it, but for me, it looks like this one, identifying arithmetic sequences and finding the common difference. This student looks like he's struggling, right? So 28 minutes on this particular topic, and the checks means that he got it right. The X means he got it wrong. And this page here means that he clicked explain. So one of the first things I might say to the student is, hey, before you try it or get it wrong several times, why don't you click explain first so you can kind of understand it. So it kind of has a trend of kind of getting it wrong a bunch of times before even clicking explain. And then I can come in here too and click on, for example, the topic itself. And I can look at, well, he tried this at 9:47 and only spent 47 seconds on it. So maybe he's kind of going too fast. You know, I'm not sure what's going on here. So you can kind of see a picture of that. And so what I might want to do is you know, call Kai up and say, hey, Kai, let's work on this one together because it looks like you are struggling with this particular topic. This one too, right? Click explain and got it wrong 4 times in a row and just moved on to something else. So you can kind of see pictures of students' behavior in here. And maybe I can say for this one, hey, you know, you finally clicked explain, and I see that you're able to learn it, right? So maybe give them a pat on the back for that. So just some really cool information that you can work with students to see how they're, to just kind of paint a picture of how they're learning within ALEKS and spending time in there. Okay, so that's the time and topic report. I know it's an important one. Do we have any questions come in about this report?
Not specifically about this report, no.
Okay, okay. So, so that's where I'm going to stop with reports. There's several other reports you can look at here in terms of objectives. Students can look at their timeline. And if we go to the class level or higher, you'll have access to custom reports that I mentioned before. And what this allows you to do is pull multiple types of information together. So if you want to pair, you know, time information with progress data and kind of what students are ready to learn, you can put that in a custom report and actually have that automatically sent to you on a periodic basis, so weekly, monthly, or whatever. So you only have to set that up one time, and you'll keep getting those reports. Okay, so here we're going to wind down pretty soon. We're going to talk about assignments pretty soon and kind of next steps after that. I could talk about ALEKS all day, so if you're interested in learning more, please let us know. But let's talk about assignments, since this is going to be really important in terms of having some more flexibility with using ALEKS. Now, of course, the power of ALEKS is in that individualized learning path that is created through the assessment and knowledge checks. But in some situations, you might want to, you know, create your own assignment and have students work on that regardless of if they're ready to learn it or if they've moved on. And so with the assignments area, you can create homework, tests, and quizzes. You can even schedule your own assessments if you want. I'm going to show you a homework assignment, and these are all of these work exactly the same. They're just named differently for grading purposes. But you can come in here and create a homework, for example. And what this allows you to do is set some custom parameters. So just like, you know, typical assignments, you can set a start date and end date. You can put an optional time limit on it. But what gets really interesting is you can come down here and customize the content. So for example, I have that textbook integrated. So if I just talked about Chapter 3 in class, I might want to open up Chapter 3 and pull in a lot of the graphing align questions into ALEKS. Right? I can even do multiple of the same question type. It's going to be a unique instance of that question for that student. So I can grab some Chapter 3 stuff. If I want to work on, you know, Common Core equivalency standards, I can come in here and grab that in here and pull that in. And I can mix and match and create as many questions as I want on this particular assignment for the students. As I come in here, I can assign partial credit for multi-part problems, even have students take it multiple times and take the best score, for example. And what's cool about this is that every time a student takes this assignment again, the questions get uniquely generated, right? So if I assign this to my whole class, they'd all get unique instances of this quiz. In addition to that, when that individual student retakes that quiz, he'll get another unique instance of it, right? So students aren't memorizing an old quiz or assignment. They're learning the concepts in the course, okay? So that's one thing that's really great about that. And then you can assign it to specific students. Like I mentioned before, you can prevent certain things from happening if they're at school or not, and you can even require passwords and so forth. So a lot of flexibility in these assignments. But my favorite thing about it, right, is that it's automatically graded for you. You don't have to, see if students got it right or wrong or give them that feedback, because they'll know right when they take it or right when the assignment date ends whether they got it correct or incorrect. And then finally, after you've created that assignment, you can come out here and print it. So I know that was one of the questions, is if we can print things. So if I created a homework here, I have a print option, and it'll allow me to print out a few unique instances of that particular homework assignment that I've created. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there, and then we can start winding down. Are there any questions right now, Meg, that have come in since we last asked?
There actually is a question about wondering if an automated email goes out to students that are not using the program as expected or not performing at the rate, a preferred rate.
No, there isn't something like that. That's very interesting. No, we don't have automatic emails that get sent out to students like that. I think for the most part we leave that to the instructor. One of the things you'll note, of course, is that when you're on your home page or your class page, you're going to be able to see kind of at-a-glance information. So maybe right here, for example, you'll see students who haven't logged in more than 7 days. So I'll give you an idea of how students are working. You also have different areas in terms of how students are working by class. But when you get to the individual class level, so if we go back to that algebra class, a lot of this stuff will bubble up to the top. So let's go here. One of my favorite tiles is just progress overall. So what you can do here is it'll show you, of course, who has the top progress. You can also just click on lowest, and you can see who's not really progressing. And if you set a grading system within ALEKS, you can do the same thing here and see who has the lowest grade. And maybe I need to talk to Jose and Jane to make sure that they're on task.
Okay, great. And then just one other question regarding the time and topic report. Is it available only to the teacher, or do both the teacher and the student have access to that report?
The teacher will have access to, of course, a class level report with all of the students. The students will have their own individual time and topic report that they can look at any time. So they just have the individual level. Obviously, they don't have access to other students' data.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So in terms of resources or things you can look at, obviously our website is a great place to go. ALEKS.com. You can always contact us here or look at just some of the different resources. If you're interested in learning more, obviously what is ALEKS is probably the place to go in terms of how ALEKS works and the different course products we offer. So I highly recommend going to this page and checking it out. I know Meg has some more information for us about some next steps. So if there's no other questions, I'll turn it over to Meg to kind of close us off today.
No other questions.
Okay, let's see if I can pass it over to you, Meg, or maybe you can just grab it from me.
Okay. Okay, great. So just a couple of things we wanted to just kind of reiterate. in closing today's webinar, that coming soon we will have ALEKS integration with our Common Core Basics program. We really highly recommend ALEKS for students that really, really need extra help learning their math skills, particularly at that foundational skill level. So the huge benefit that the ALEKS integration with any textbook alignment, but specifically with our Common Core Basics program that will come with that are you'll get a custom syllabus aligned with the textbook that's automatically assigned to any ALEKS class that you have in the program. There will be textbook references on those ALEKS Explain pages. You'll get data-driven reporting based on your Common Core Basics correlation. And there will be easy-to-use assignment creation organized by your Common Core Basics chapters. So anybody that asks a question about, you know, do we have, is ALEKS aligned to the Common Core state standards? Is ALEKS aligned to the college and career readiness standards? Our Common Core Basics program is, of course, built upon those standards. And so with this, with the integration of ALEKS and our Common Core Basics program, you'll know that your ALEKS program is going to automatically be aligned to those standards. And we'll, of course, keep you updated as soon as that integration is made. And we are offering a very special offer for June purchases only. We're offering you guys the opportunity to try a 12-month subscription of ALEKS for just $17.97 per seat. It's actually a 60% savings. Typically, a 12-month subscription of ALEKS goes for $45. So we're offering this very special price with any purchase of Common Core Basics or Common Core Achieve. So for every $50 spent on Basics or Achieve products, you'll be able to purchase one ALEKS seat at this special rate. So for more information or details on this special June offer, just contact your sales representative at the web address listed right here, commoncoreachieve.com/contact. You'll be able to find your state, just click on your state, and you'll be able to get your sales rep's contact information. And we just wanted to, again, thank you for attending today's webinar. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes to spend with us on the ALEKS program today. We'll be sending a follow-up email with a link to the recording of today's webinar. Feel free to share it with colleagues or review it as much as you like. And also, as you exit the webinar today, a survey will open, and we really appreciate your feedback to help us improve and plan future webinars. And then lastly, if we didn't get a chance to answer your question today, we will definitely follow up with you individually. And certainly, if you have any additional questions after today's webinar, please feel free to email us at webinars@mheducation.com. And again, thanks so much, and we hope you have a great day.